Morning, Jay.
60-40. 60-40.
Yes.
Morning.
Got it.
I think she's an assistant chief.
Okay. Got it. Sorry. All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to call this meeting of the Board of County Commissioners to order. This meeting will allow the public to participate both in person and temporarily by utilizing virtual communications media technology. This meeting may be viewed on SGTV channel, and I think it's 431. I'm not sure, but I know it's in the 400s. On YouTube and by registering to participate in the Zoom webinar. Interested parties may register in advance of the Board of County Commissioners meeting by registering on the Board of County Commissioners webpage and scrolling down the webinar registration link. After registering, parties will receive a confirmation email containing information regarding how to join the webinar. If you are unable to join via a computer or online, interested parties should call 407-665-0808 for additional information on how to participate via telephone. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and adhere to all social distancing and face covering requirements. Seeing no questions, there will be a test later on all of that. So I hope you were all taking notes. So we are calling the meeting to order today, and as you can see, Commissioner Zimbauer is not physically present, but he is on the Zoom and smiling right now, and it's good to have you, Commissioner Zimbauer, with us today. I'm going to ask Pastor Megan Killingsworth of the First United Seventh-day Adventist Church in Sanford to give us the invocation. Pastor Megan.
Let us pray. God, our Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer, the God who knows every hair on our head, the God who knows us by name. Lord, we ask that as we are gathered today, that your priorities, your heart, your love would permeate all that we do. We ask that you would make this community more loving, more just, more forgiving, more hopeful, and better able to love one another. Give us eyes to see our neighbors in our midst. Give us ears to hear the ways that they cry, that they suffer, that they are in need. And give us hearts to know and love you, to know and love each other, and to make this world a better place. All this we ask by your grace. Amen.
Amen. And Mr. Orth, will you please come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
Just come right into the front there.
Sure.
So we can.
Please join me in saying the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Pastor, thank you for a wonderful prayer. Thank you very much. We have a few proclamations and presentations today. The first will be a proclamation recognizing Colonel Ephraim Grubbs III, and Commissioner Herr will read the proclamation.
It is certainly my honor to read the proclamation of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing United States Army Colonel Ephraim E. Grubbs III for his outstanding service to the United States and Seminole County. Whereas the brave men and women of our Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, and Space Force demonstrate a resolute spirit and unmatched selflessness, reminding us there are few things more American than giving of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of others. And whereas throughout our country's history, generations of service members have answered the call to leave their families, their jobs, and put their futures and even their lives on the line to valiantly defend our nation and its inalienable rights. And whereas for many service members, the sacrifice has ended in permanent injury or death, yet their spirit remains in the continued preservation of our freedom and the promise of liberty. And whereas there are more than 30,000 living veterans in Seminole County who served our nation in times of peace and war, by their service they kept America strong. And whereas Colonel Ephraim Grubbs was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army upon graduation from the Citadel in 1990, his admirable service culminated in his promotion to colonel. And whereas Colonel Ephraim Grubbs was deployed around the globe in support of numerous operations, including Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, Operation Guantanamo Haitian Humanitarian Relief Mission, and in support of multinational peacekeeping forces in Egypt. And whereas Colonel Ephraim Grubbs transitioned from active duty to the National Guard in 1998, where he held numerous positions, including Operations Officer, Headquarters Planning and Doctrine Officer, Battalion Commander, and Brigade Commander. And whereas Colonel Ephraim Grubbs retired from the Army and built a successful commercial construction company in Lake Mary. He served as Director of Football and head coach for Lake Mary Youth Football. He's been an active Rotarian for more than 15 years and is now serving as an assistant governor's role at the district level in the Rotary. He provides support to 64 clubs in our Central Florida area. Whereas Colonel Ephraim Grubbs has brought great credit and distinction upon himself, the United States Army, his country, and Seminole County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, express our gratitude, admiration, and respect for Colonel Ephraim Grubbs for his outstanding service to the United States Army and residents of Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation be presented to Colonel Ephraim Grubbs along with our sincere congratulations and recognition as Seminole County's Veteran of the Month, adopted this 24th day of August, 2021.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Colonel Grubbs, would you like to come up, please? There's a little spot there where you're supposed to sit. You would help me that person. There's the spot, right there.
Sure. On my. Usually you can hear me. That's fine.
I don't think you need a microphone.
Okay. If you don't mind, look, on behalf of all the veterans, thank you for this recognition, and thank you all for your continued service to our community. So we really appreciate that. I want to give a quick recognition to my Rotary Club who nominated me for this, and some of the representatives that are here for that, Lake Mary Rotary Club, and as well as the Lake Mary Youth Football Association, Pop Warner, where I've been a participant for the last 14 years in coaching the young ones. And last but not least, it couldn't be done at all if base operations weren't taken care of. So my wife Renee of 31 years this year has been with me for Unemployment, 4 boys, new business, and the list goes on and on. So the real hero there is our family support. So again, thank you for the community support and for your service to our community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Grubbs. Before we go on to the next thing, and I think the Colonel won't mind as an Army man if I recognize a naval officer that we lost this past week. One of the first veterans of the week, or veterans of the month, as we all remember, was Richard Robbie Roberts. He passed away this past week at 107 years of age. He was one of the oldest living veterans in the United States. He remained positive and optimistic all the way through. He used to live on my block, and he used to live in an ACLF, and he would walk by my house very early in the morning and late in the afternoon. And one day I saw him walking by, and I said, sir, you're here every day. Where do you live? He told me he was living in the ACLF. I invited him to come in. He said, do you have any beer? And we sat out on the porch and talked for a long while, and I went over to visit him a couple of times at the home, and one time during Veterans Day, or it might have been Memorial Day, he was actually wearing his original uniform. He was an officer in the Navy, an aviator. He joined the Navy in 1938, and after listening to an advertising on the radio, Captain Roberts served in the U.S. Navy for 26 years as a legendary pilot and leader in peace and war. He earned his Navy Wings of Gold in 1939 and was an already accomplished aircraft commander in the PBY-4 Catalina on pre-war patrol in the Philippines when the Japanese attacked. He fought in every major battle in the Pacific, earning 9 campaign ribbons and a Bronze Star with a V for Valor in combat. He also flew missions in remote areas of China, supporting the famous Flying Tigers Expeditionary Force. He was also shot down 3 days after the war began, but eluded capture and was picked up. And we gave him back in May of 2019, and I just thought that it would be recognized because he was still smiling, still happy, and still the life of the party when he passed. So I thought that in this day that we should recognize him. So I hope you don't mind, Colonel Grubbs, if I shared that. So with that, also we have a proclamation proclaiming September 11th, 2021 as Patriots Day in Seminole County. And I believe that we have a proclamation as well as a presentation. And Chief Kinley and Chief Ward, would you like to make the presentation before, or the video before, and then I'll have the Commissioner read the proclamation?
Yes.
Okay, please come on up, sir. And ma'am.
You go ahead and read the video first?
If that would be,
Yes, sir.
if that's what you would like us to do, yes.
20 years ago, the morning of September 11, 2001, 2 planes crashed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, minutes apart. That day, a defining one in American history.
I was in AP World History class, I remember very specifically, and I think everybody was just watching in disbelief.
Let's just get back. Get back.
I was watching the television when the second plane hit, and it was devastating knowing, the loss of life that was going to occur.
to those of us in the fire service, that's our family. And so that hurt.
For some, that day influenced their career choice, a call to become a part of that family.
They didn't back down from that challenge. So to me, as a kid, I just grew up thinking that was the most heroic, awesome thing ever.
And for those already wearing the uniform, a sobering reminder of the potential consequences of the career they chose.
We're not promised tomorrow, and these people gave it their all.
Assistant Chief Becky Ward, retired Battalion Chief Rick Chabot, and retired Lieutenant Steve Jones were all members of Seminole County Fire Department's Honor Guard in the early 2000s. In 2002, on the one-year anniversary, they represented SCFD at memorials held both at Ground Zero and Washington, D.C.
At that ground zero point, just looking into this massive pit where they had excavated, it was overwhelming. It was like you were walking on sacred ground. We're seeing all the shirts and the pictures, and there wasn't a dry eye among us, knowing what had happened at this point.
It was such an emotional event. I'm glad that we were there for Seminole County, but I was also glad that we were there for as being firefighters ourselves, and knowing that our family members have passed during that time.
It clearly still chokes you up to this day.
It does. It always will.
It was probably one of the most beautiful ceremonies I've ever witnessed. He approached the podium, he took a deep breath, and he read this beautiful poem.
We miss you, fallen heroes.
It was the very last part of it that hit home. And, when we talk about the new firefighters coming on and what this means to us and, what 9/11 meant to us, I go back to this poem, and the last part says this: "Let us testify, brothers and sisters, to the family of the fallen,
whose love for their heroes is deeper than the sea."
And while he was reading this poem, I remember looking to the right at the honor guard that was with me, and I remember looking to the left, and every single one of those guys were wiping tears from their eyes. And at that moment, I lost it. We were all just crying together.
In everything we do, may you live on, fallen heroes, in the enduring sea of blue.
During these attacks, it was the intent of the enemy to change American life forever. And they did, because we came together.
Chief?
Matt Kinley, Deputy Chief of the Seminole County Fire Department. I had some prepared words, and this becomes an emotional time for all firefighters across the nation, the world. It's a somber day. We lost 343 of our brothers and sisters, along with our friends in law enforcement. It's also a humbling time for all of our firefighters to be even mentioned in the same breath as the ones that gave their lives. You're torn because you have a bunch of your brothers and sisters that have died, and you try to put that all in perspective for yourself with your family. Again, we just want to thank the commission, the community for the support that they show with the Seminole County firefighters and all the firefighters in Seminole County, along with our law enforcement, and please don't forget them. Thank you, and thank you for the proclamation, and please never forget.
Thank you, Chief. Chiefs. Commissioner Lockhart?
Commissioners, I'd like to move the following proclamation, proclaiming September 11th, 2021 as Patriot Day in Seminole County. Whereas the citizens of Seminole County will join with our fellow Americans in honoring and remembering those who lost their lives 20 years ago in the most egregious in our country's history. And whereas in 102 minutes, nearly 3,000 innocent men, women, and children perished, including 265 passengers on 4 hijacked airplanes, 2,606 individuals in the World Trade Center and surrounding area, and 125 people in the attack on the Pentagon. And whereas we commend the firefighters, police, and first responders who courageously risk their lives to rescue those in need, including the 343 firefighters, 23 police officers, and 37 Port Authority officers who perished. And whereas, in the spirit that moved rescue workers and firefighters to charge into the darkness that September morning, we remember the victims, their families, and the heroes who stood up during one of our country's darkest moments. And whereas, on September 4th, 2002, President George W. Bush inaugurated the observance of Patriot Day, ensuring that the September 11th terrorist attack remains into the consciousness of the American people. Whereas 20 years later, we continue our collective promise never to forget and to commit to educate a new generation so that they may learn the lessons of 9/11. And whereas, as we mark the anniversary of September 11th, 2001, we remember what remains the same: our character as a nation, our faith, and our legacy as a country strengthened by service and selflessness. Now therefore be it proclaimed that Seminole County Board of County Commissioners does hereby recognize September 11th, 2021 as Patriot Day in Seminole County. Be it further proclaimed that the Board of County Commissioners calls upon residents to observe Patriot Day with a moment of silence at 8:46 a.m. on September 11th, 2021. Adopted this 24th day of August, 2021.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Chief, was there anything else that you wanted to, as far as the pictures or anything?
I would like to get a picture with the firefighters with the board.
That would be nice if the firefighters would step up front. Before we do that, though, I think it's appropriate after what I just said with, with Captain Roberts, and then certainly the 3,000 folks that we lost, souls that we lost, and that has changed our country forever, that we stand for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Firefighters, come on down. Commissioners, one of the things I was going to mention in the chairman's report, but I'll mention it today. The city of Sanford will have a 9/11 remembrance ceremony at the Veterans Memorial Park, and the agenda has been placed, I believe, or you have it, it was emailed to each of you. They will be having or requesting a reading of our proclamation. Commissioner Herr, right at this moment, I don't think I can make it, and I was going to make an offer to you, since it's your district, if you would like to read that proclamation.
Thank you, I'll do so.
Okay, good. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. I'm going to read again something I need to put in front of each of you before we start. Pursuant to Florida law, the public has the right to be heard in all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners is acting on ministerial or emergency matters, or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011. Florida statutes. The public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for group representatives. The right to be heard during quasi-judicial hearings is governed by Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda matters at the end of the meeting. And we always request proper decorum be observed. With that, we have items 3 through 24. Is there anyone that wishes to withdraw anything from 3 through 24? Seeing none, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak on consent items 3 through 24? Any consent item 3 through 24? Also, we have today, we have someone new behind the virtual camera. James, is there anybody that is out there that wishes to speak on the consent agenda?
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there's two. I'll bring one in right away.
James, you were kind of like mumbling, or not, you weren't mumbling, but I couldn't understand you. So could you speak up again, please, sir?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there's a couple of raised hands. I'll bring the first one in.
Okay. I don't have any names in front of me, so, but I do see the two hands. All right. I have guest LAPT. You are recognized.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. Hey, sorry I couldn't be there in person. This is Cindy Holler. I wanted to comment on
Cindy,
consent
please put your
agenda
address, just for the record. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry about that, Commissioner. 1731 Beacon Drive, Sanford.
Thank you, Cindy.
I wanted to comment on consent agenda number 3, the American Rescue Plan. The funding, I'd like to see funding go to the zoo if possible. I believe they're in need of that. I've just had some family members visit. Make the Zoom option permanent for the public to have easier access. For funds to go to land acquisition for both parks, for people's enjoyment and mental health, and also just raw land for wildlife.
Thank you, Cindy. Is there any questions from any member?
I'm sorry, would the county manager like to address some of maybe the zoo and some other things that have already been funded?
Well, we did fund the zoo with the CARES Act money. They received over $1 million in CARES Act money. With respect to parks and just natural lands, there are some limitations under the American Rescue Plan as to what we can spend money on. As you'll recall, when I was sharing information with the board and we were talking about potential expenditures, with respect to recreational amenities, the act is very targeted towards disadvantaged neighborhoods. So we put a focus on that in the spending plan. There also has to be a connection between COVID and the expenditures of the dollars for the most part. There is an option under revenue replacement to spend some of those funds on general government services. So there may be some opportunities there. But the board has indicated that with respect to the revenue replacement, your priority has been budget stabilization. So, but in general, the funds related, the funds that we're going to receive under the rescue plan have to somehow be related to COVID or to mitigating disadvantaged communities and situations where folks are maybe on an uneven playing field going into the COVID crisis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Thank you. Excuse me. I'd like to add, I appreciate Commissioner Lockhart bringing Ms. Gouye into the conversation. I would say that disadvantaged people are almost more adversely affected by the pandemic, and that their mental health and their ability to go to have more access to parks is important. So I do see a relation there.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Anyone else on there? Now we have 3 hands. So,
Yes, sir.
James?
Bringing the second one in.
Chairman, you also have a commissioner who's got a hand up.
Okay.
And maybe if you change
And I just want to make sure I see everything. Okay. Was that you, Jay? Commissioner Zimbauer?
Yes, I just wanted to suggest, thank you, Chairman. I would suggest that we make Ms. Gouye's presentation that was given to our board at the last meeting pertaining to the ARPA funds, maybe forward that to Ms. Holler for her review, so she'll have the same information that we received in the event she wasn't able to see that at the last meeting. I would also tell you, as your designated member on the zoo board, we're very appreciative of the $1.5 million from the COVID money that was given to the zoo. The zoo is actually in a pretty good spot right now. So I don't see that we have a big need at the zoo. Of course, the zoo will always take money. If there's money to hand out, we'll certainly take it. But the mitigation funds that were given to us under COVID certainly have and continue to allow the zoo to move forward. I would also point out, as you all know, we've committed $6 million to mental health program with the sheriff's office, and I think the other cities are going to attempt to fill that gap with the other $3 million. So her points are well taken, but I think on many points we're already doing many of those things. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Zimbauer. Appreciate very much. And I was also at the Tourist Development Commission, and the zoo made a presentation, and they equally said the same thing you did, that their numbers are up, they're doing great, and they were greatly appreciative of the money that we have provided them. So with that, who's next? James?
We have, says guest laptop.
That's me, Nancy Harmon.
Hi, guest laptop. Yeah.
Hey, guest laptop, sir, friend.
Name
Nancy
and
Harmon.
address. Yeah. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, name and address. Thank you.
752 Pioneer Way, Geneva, Florida. Thanks for the conversation so far on this. I'm on consent agenda 3 as well. I had questions from this standpoint. You know, I'm on the area of revenue replacement, and I wanted to ask, what was the total loss that Seminole County incurred of revenue in 2020 as a result of COVID, and how this $48 million that has been set aside for that correlates to what was lost? That's the first question I have. I do, thanks for the conversation and clarification on the use of funds for disadvantaged communities and those in areas of that were affected more so by this. So my question to you is, when we get down into the $19 million that's set aside for general government needs and services to the communities, what exactly is in that list? And when we talk of the $27.5 million for budget stabilization, I wonder why that's necessary when and not usable now for services that were not done during 2020 that may have been put on the back burner. Why that's being done when in fact we just had a briefing about our taxes aren't going up from property taxes, but because of the values of our homes going up, there's this nice little pocket of money coming in from the taxes that I don't understand why that money isn't being used for budget stabilization, since that would appear to me to be an increase of reserve. So those are my questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Harmon. We did have, and I think you might have been here if you weren't, I'm sorry you missed it because it was a very thorough discussion of the American Recoveries Act and what we were going to spend it and why we were spending money on that stabilization fund. Briefly, however, County Manager, would you like to just address that?
Certainly. I apologize, but I'm not able to give you an exact number today on what the revenue losses were during 2020. We can get that. I know our budget folks have it, so I'm happy to get you that information. But with respect to the revenue replacement dollars, the number that we have included in the proposed plan is based on a formula, a calculus that was developed by the Treasury Department that brings into a lot of factors, including historic revenue growth, et cetera. And I'm happy to share that formula with Ms. Harmon and anybody else who would like to see it. The intention of the revenue replacement is under the rescue plan is not simply to replace revenue that was lost in 2020. There is an anticipation that revenue growth in local governments across the nation will decline. It has declined. We've seen that already in this fiscal year and will continue to decline through the term of the rescue plan dollars. For example, we've seen our revenue growth cut more than in half than what we've seen in previous years with this upcoming budget. And the reason that those funds are being used as budget stabilization, and what we recommended to you to use them as for budget stabilization is, you'll know this year's budget, which is there are not a lot of increased services. There are some, but generally maintaining the level of service that we have in the county, even with the growth in property taxes related to the increase in value, we were still at an $8 million deficit because our revenue growth was significantly less than it had been the prior year. And governments are just like anyone else. They're not immune to inflation and other price increases. We've seen, I think everybody has seen the price of goods and services increase in the last year, and we experienced those same price increases. So the reason that we recommended from a staff standpoint that you use part of that the revenue replacement dollars simply for budget stabilization is so that you can maintain your millage rates at the lowest possible level, and that we can continue to provide services despite the increasing cost to the county to provide those services. The use of all of those revenue replacement dollars is for general government services. Again, that provision was put in the rescue plan because there was a recognition by the federal government, Treasury Department, and members of Congress that local governments, just like everybody else, are facing declining revenues, and they placed the continuity of service to the community as a priority when they drafted this bill. So that's what those dollars are to be used for, and really so that we can maintain the same level of service in the community without overburdening the folks that live here.
Commissioner Zimbauer, I'm going to recognize you after this, but I did want to also point out that in our packet, we do have the Seminole County Recovery Plan, State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds, the 2021 report based upon the American Rescue Plan Act. And I was just going to ask County Manager, do we have that up on the website? Yes.
It is posted with the agenda, and the presentation that was given to the board at the last meeting relative to ARPA is associated with the agenda from that meeting as well. So we're happy to send it to anybody who would like it, but they can also access it online from the agenda from your last board meeting.
So Ms. Haller and Ms. Hammond, I want you to know that that is there if you would like to take a further look and deep dive. Also, just so you're aware, because there are not dollars in here of some of the things that you've talked about, that does not mean that they have not been covered through the general revenue in the budget. And I think a number of the things that you've mentioned do have line items in the fiscal year 21-22 budget. So with that, Commissioner Zimbauer, are you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for pointing out exactly that the ARPA presentation is part of the agenda. It is available to the public online. I think it may be helpful maybe to perhaps provide the great work that Desmond and the County Attorney's Office has done in working with the Fed on the opinions on what the monies can actually be used for. I think the public may be surprised, because I constantly get a question as a commissioner, can we do this? We need money for that. We need, But it's very clear on the research that our county attorney's office has done that there's very specific matrix of what this funding can be used for and what it can't be used for. And I would also remind my fellow commissioners as well as the county manager, we know that things are going on in DC, that they're talking, unfortunately, in a political format, that we may not actually get all the money we were told we're going to get. They're still talking and discussing, and some of that may be pulled back. So we got to be very careful moving forward in making sure we meet the criteria for the Fed, and our attorneys have vetted that process. So I know, again, Desmond did a very good white paper on what I would ask that we share that with the public so they have that same information.
Thank you, Commissioner Zimbauer.
May I interject one more time, please, sir?
Ms. Harmon, yes, but please understand those that are on the video. This is not a back and forth conversation.
I understand.
And you, Ms. Haller did that, and now you and I. Look, we love you. We really do. We love you having, participating. But, but I understand that you want to get your words in, and I appreciate it. But remember, this is not a give and take and back and forth conversation. This is a presentation, and then in your 3 minutes, and then if you're asked a question, certainly. But yes, I will give you latitude at this time.
The only reason why I asked, sir, is because Nicole did provide some clarification. And I wanted to, and as did Commissioner Zimbauer, and I wanted to say that I would appreciate that information. The other thing that would be of interest to me, and it's concerning to me that it's come up, is that Nicole stated that there was an $8 million deficit, and she expected that over the next 4 years, this is how I heard it, that we would continue to see deficits, and that's why the stabilization was put up there. So what I would like to know is if in the future, and we had this in the last meeting, and I was there when we had this presentation last time, and I've been in the CARES, and what I'm recognizing is there's overlap in my mind of how these funds are being allocated, and I'd like to be able to see how that allocation is happening. I'd like to see the budget. These are great presentations. Everybody does a wonderful job, but my background is budget as well, and I just like, from a taxpayer's position, I'd like to be able to see how these funds are all being blended to ensure that we are, in fact, doing what we as taxpayers believe is recommended or required. Even though you all may make the decision we're not correct, I'll accept that. But I just don't think we're getting all the data that we need to be able to see these budgets and how things blend, because they're not presented at the same time. And I will move on. Thank you very much for your time.
County Manager, I was aware that the budget was all on the webpage, is it not?
It is. You've had several work sessions on the budget, and all of that information is available on the website. Additionally, as we've talked about ARPA, every presentation that we've had has been made available associated with the agenda for the meeting that we've discussed it. And we will show the public hearing adjustments at the first public hearing. Items that are related to the ARPA, there is information and will be information related to that. I think we did show the proposed budget that we submitted to you did not have a lot of I don't know that it had any discussion of ARPA in it at the time, because there were some CARES Act monies in there, but not ARPA monies, because we were still determining how we were going to spend them. When we talked about potential additional projects resulting from the retreat, we identified in that document and in the presentation that was done during that work session what would be funded through general fund dollars and what would be funded through ARPA dollars. So I think as we've gotten that information, we have made it available to you, and it's all been in documents that have been part of the agendas of the public meetings. And as we move forward, of course, we have two public hearings on the budget. The items that you've approved for use of ARPA funds moving forward will be included in that as part of the public hearing adjustments. And all of that information is available online in association with those meeting agendas.
Thank you. And all I wanted to say is that because if there are questions out there, it is, Ms. Harmon is absolutely right. As a taxpayer, we want to be as transparent and open as possible and give them every information that we possibly can. And if they have questions, I would love to get those questions answered. So there is nothing from stopping any of you from, asking those questions, delivering them by email or, by written, and we'll try to get every one of those answered each and every time. It's kind of hard to, at a commission meeting, go through, where everything is put together when we've had a number of workshops and we'll continue to have meetings on the budget. So I do encourage you all to do that, and thank you very much for your input.
Chairman?
Yes, please.
So I think the request, to boil it down, is around the notion that it needs to be easily understandable. And so it's about calling it out, ARPA versus regular revenue, which I think is a wonderful request because it will build to an understanding of what may not feel like a deficit is a deficit, which was your point, which I think is important that we communicate exceptionally well, red line, green line, as Commissioner Delary likes to call it. So it's about making sure that to the non-government entity accounting person, to the average bear, the average citizen, that we can draw the correlation of where it went. And so it's not about it's in there, it's about it's in there and we can understand it.
Good point. Thank you very much. You did boil it down, Commissioner Hurt. I think we still have somebody, James?
They lowered their hands, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
They lowered their hands, Mr. Chairman.
I think it was Mr. Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys, I heard that you had to go to the emergency this past week. I hope you're feeling better. And you're welcome to bring up any points you'd like to at any particular time during this meeting in the public hearing, during the public hearings. With that, we have in front of us the 3 through 24. Yes, Commissioner?
I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 3 through 24 as presented here today.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that? Commissioner Hurt.
Yes, I would just like to put it on the record that item number 3, I did inquire through the county attorney's office, who also did inquire through the Ethics Commission, that I can vote on this item.
We are happy about that. And with that, and no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously the consent agenda. We are now on item number 25, County Attorney's agenda on the Village of the Green project. County Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is pursuant to Chapter 154 of the Florida statutes, asking for the approval of a resolution approving the issuance by the Palm Beach County Health Facilities Authority of that authority's revenue bonds in one or more series for the purpose of providing funds to make a loan for loans to LifeSpace Communities, Inc., among other things, finance and refinance certain facilities located in Seminole County, Florida. This item was originally approved back in 2018, and this is just for additional funding. And again, our bond counsel and my office has signed off on the documents.
Is there any questions? Any discussion? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this? Is there anybody in the virtual world that wishes to speak on this? James, did you?
No, sir.
No, sir. Okay. So is there motion is appropriate? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the resolution as presented here today on item 25.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Discussion of the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now on item 26, the Clerk's Office consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve item number 26 as presented.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Mr. Clerk, do you have any comments since it's so controversial, this particular thing? I know you do not. Good. With that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we now are at the regular agenda, and I believe Markley, I'm going to recognize Markley Jean-Charles for a presentation.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Markley Jean-Charles. I'm the Purchasing Contracts Division Manager. We're asking the board to select a firm and award the financial advisory services. This service is for general and special obligation debt transactions related to the issuance of bonds, bank loans, notes, certificates, and other financial instruments, as well as ongoing financial advisory services. Part of this service, the firm will assist in the preparation and analysis of feasibility studies in cooperation with county officials and administrative staff. The solicitation was advertised for 30 days. We had 4 responses, and we submitted the proposals as well as staff's comments to the board. And now we're asking the board to decide who to select.
Questions? Seeing none, I will ask a question then. This is, this was a policy, if I am understanding this, County Manager, from the 1990s?
Yes, sir.
It's not like some of the others. This is one that this board established as a policy, that they would do this in a ranking form. My question would be could we do it as a motion if we felt so inclined?
So it's an uncodified policy. It's
Okay.
a policy that's based on direction given at a meeting, and so it's been an ongoing practice. The board, it is up to the board how you want to handle this.
Okay. Members of the board, does anybody have any comments? Because, yes, I would like to make a comment, but go ahead, Commissioner.
My recommendation is that as a result of this being this far down the road in this format, that we move forward with it. I would be happy to make a recommendation to move forward with PFM as the vendor. I would also make the comment that I am less comfortable than perhaps past commissioners have been with following an uncodified policy, and that we should fix this for future use. I'm also less comfortable with the board being the evaluation team than perhaps past may have been. I certainly did my homework. I did a spreadsheet. This is what I do for a living, but that's not where this should be. It shouldn't be here.
Commissioner, if I can, I'm going to recognize you, Commissioner Lockhart, after I say this. That's music to my ears, because I have been saying this since the day I walked through the door, that I felt very uncomfortable with us doing this, and that I would have preferred a staff recommendation not being codified. I think that what your recommendation is appropriate. I would like to hear from the other commissioners, and at this point, as to how they would like to proceed. Commissioner Lockhart.
So while we don't have a ranking from the evaluation team, we do have scores. And if you understand a number line, you know that some numbers are higher than others. So we kind of have a ranking, I think. I am curious, though, because it looks like every evaluator's score, it's an aggregate, it's a total, so it's kind of hard to match a number with a comment. Right? Like, we have everybody's scores averaged together, I think, in the scoring piece. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So through my powers of deduction, I'm reading a comment, but I don't really know which comment would be associated with which score. So that was a little difficult for me, just as feedback, if we don't change the way we're doing it. I would I would also say, I've worked with a couple of these firms in past lives. I haven't worked with others, but I also, all of us know people in this space, and we talk to people who work with different firms, and a firm is more about the people. This is my perspective. This is my opinion. A firm is more about the people and the team that they're pulling together than they are necessarily about the name or the logo. And so, my thought process coming into this, I was looking at the top two scoring firms. I think they are both very capable, competent firms. One is a big powerhouse. One is more of a smaller, might be able to meet our individual needs, have a little more of a concierge-type feeling. I'm not sure that one is better than the other necessarily. It would just be, frankly, our team and our staff who are going to be working with these folks diligently. What is your level of comfort? And so it's a little frustrating for me not having had those kinds of conversations and knowing who has a comfort level with which firm to know how to read these tea leaves. So that's my feedback. I'll concur with Commissioner Herr that I would prefer, if staff is going to go through the work and the effort of being asked to review these submittals, that we really take their advice and their input for all that it's worth, not just the parts and pieces that maybe give us flexibility.
I think that and Commissioner Zimbauer, I'm going to recognize you in a second. I think just for the staff's thing, this was something that obviously, specific to the finances that they had requested to be done this way before. It is not my preferred way, as I've indicated, but they wanted, in abundance of caution, to do it the way that had been done in the past. So I think that's the reason why we're where we are right now. Commissioner Zimbauer, and then Commissioner DeLore.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had this discussion, I can count on my hand, at least 4 times in these matters since I arrived. One conversation was, we had actually quite a bit of conversation, that what we really ought to consider in some of these matters is that the staff qualify those who have submitted their information, and then of those submittals, we should hear the presentation as a commission and make that decision based on the presentation. Now, that provides transparency. I've heard each one of my fellow commissioners talk about transparency, transparency, transparency. If you want the public to truly have transparency, then let the vendors come give the presentation, let the public hear it, let us make that hard decision as the elected official, and then move forward. Because I got to tell you, I've gone back and looked at some of the presentations, like Commissioner Lockhart is referring to. She doesn't understand what something might mean or what a comment was actually referring to. If you go back and look at the presentations, and when staff is doing those reviews and receiving those presentations, it's very telling. And you can actually start to put those lines together. So that's my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner DeLore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been involved with several bonds that this county has done over the years. It is about relationships. It's also about the ability to get the job done. I've gone to New York several times to do ratings with Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and the financial advisor is key. But it's also key on how they perform. I can tell you that it's not, in the past, we have not had as great as bond rating as we have today. We have a phenomenal bond rating. And it was going back, when I was the chairman, going back with the financial advisor and with Standard & Poor's and Moody's and trying to figure out how to get that rating up. And it worked out well. It's not everything you see in the presentation, and it's not sometimes what staff is looking at. Staff does a phenomenal job, but Commissioner Zimbauer is correct. Staff should be evaluating all the people that apply to make sure that they are competent then I think it'd be prudent for us to actually see or hear the presentation, because in the past, when we've had to go to New York to do these ratings, it's not an easy task. The board has been very involved with it. And I would tell you, both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, the times that I've been up there, they've made comments that it's not on a regular basis that commissioners are actually involved in the presentation. And they commend us for doing that because the board understands not just how the rating's being done, not just the underwriters and the financial advisor, but understands the budget in great detail that they can actually make those presentations with staff. And that continuity really sets the stage. And that's how we've gotten the bond ratings that we've gotten and how we've moved up. I think that they should be, as Commissioner Zimbow talked about, evaluated for staff for completeness and competency to make sure that they are competent, which all four of these firms are. But then it's up to us. I'd like to actually see the presentations. I can move forward with it today. But in the future, I think it's important that we actually have full transparency so that the people that are answering to the citizens are making those decisions, and we're not just taking what staff is telling us and saying, okay, because if you look at some of these numbers, a lot of people getting consistent numbers across the boards, and I think it's about how well they've done. I will tell you that PFM Financial Advisors does a phenomenal job, in my opinion. They stand out, and in these troubled times that we're in and the way the market is, that we need a powerhouse like that to represent not just the board, but all of Seminole County. Because the questions that Moody's and Standard & Poor's is going to be asking, you'll be amazed. They're not just asking about what this board is doing. They're asking about the school board. They're asking about the 7 cities. They're asking about the surrounding counties. They're getting into details. They want to know, the capital improvement plans we're doing. What's our millage rate? Do we have the appetite to make sure that our bond coverage is correct in our water and sewer? They get into great detail. It's not just a show up there, it's getting into the meat and potatoes, and we need to make sure that whoever our financial advisor is, as well as our underwriters, that they have the ability to represent not just this board, but the entire county as a whole. And so presently, I think that it behooves us maybe tweak the policy a little bit by seeing presentations for more transparency in these troubled times. But I think it's important that staff reviews them for not just completeness, but for competency. And then it's up to the board to make that decision. I, for one, I think that PFM is the one that we should be going with. And but I think that we should also be ranking them so that if we can't come to a deal with the first round, that we have a second tiered person to go to.
Commissioner, I just want to make it clear. I don't want the staff, and correct me, the board, I'm asking the board for direction here. I don't think that we really want every single time we do a contract like this that we have a presentation. I remember that we had one for the sustainability, which lasted all day, and every one of you were giving me a hard time when, I was just trying to run the meeting. But I saw the need, and I think we all saw the need, because there was a great deal of education there that we all wanted to learn. New ideas. We were getting into something that we had never really done before, so we wanted to pick the right team, and that's what we were picking, the right team. In this case, I think we have had a lot of experience with the financial advisory services. I don't know if, I don't want to give the staff the direction that every time a contract comes up that we want to have a, presentation of all this. So we have to be very careful about which ones we say we do and we don't, and maybe This is not the time that we can flush this out, but we might want to think about it as to which ones we would like to have presentations on and which ones we would not. In this case, I'm hearing and I might be mistaken, but I've heard from 3 commissioners that are here that seem to have a preference that maybe we can make a motion. However, I think that Commissioner Delory is correct that we need to have a secondary. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion then to rank PFM Financial Advisors number 1 and Hilltop Security as number 2.
There is a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion with a comment that with regard to PFM, the negotiation needs to include the elimination of some of the additional fees that were not outlined in the contract. They were the only ones that put things like copying and faxing, and that is often an area of consulting that can add up unintendedly. But I would concur with that.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, I'll amend my motion to accept the seconder's recommendations.
Okay, so that will be a friendly motion in the motion, friendly amendment to the motion in the motion, without objection, without objection. Commissioner Lockhart.
I want clarification because I heard a motion, but I heard what you thought you heard the motion to be, which would be I think that's what I heard, was that that there would be a second, not like if you can't negotiate with this one, then go to number 2. But I think the way it was stated made it sound like we were actually going to have a first and a second. And I think my thought is we are picking one.
With a second, with a backup. If you cannot achieve a negotiation, from my understanding,
Okay.
as the
I just want
chairman for the motion,
Okay.
is that that the motion was, and Commissioner Delory can tell me if I'm wrong, is that that the preference would be to negotiate with PFM, and if those negotiations, along with the friendly amendment, did not work out, then to go to number 2.
That is correct,
And then
Mr.
negotiation with them.
Okay.
And that is what I think I seconded.
Okay, just making sure.
I will get to you, Markley.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so since there's a motion and a second on the floor, we'll, I guess, deal with that. But I'm not as comfortable, frankly, with Hilltop as second. They have done a wonderful job for us as a company in the past, but they have almost an entirely new team. It's not the team that we've been working with. That may be why staff scoring was not reflective of the experience that we've had with them in the past. I think that goes back to the relationships that each one of us have talked about and the importance of their ability to go to market and be able to execute. So I have a concern about that. And I'm not sure from how to handle that, if that would be able to be reconsidered and we actually go with the scoring that staff provided, because there's a very close, actually, it's not close. The first and I would ask that the motion and second are amended to the first and second scoring, which is PFM and Frasca. Given the fact that the Hilltop that is assembled as a team today is not the same team that we have had in the past.
Mr. Markley, what did you want to say? I'm sorry.
So we are asking the board to select and award to one firm.
Right.
There is no intention to go back and negotiate. It's just going to be that one firm. We will go back and address the additional fees issue. However, the choice we made today is the firm we will award to.
All right.
Then, Mr. Chairman, I'll reaffirm my motion, if I may, and that will be, as Markley stated, to just acknowledge that PFM Financial Advisors, LLC is the firm to pick.
Second.
Okay, what I'm going to do, so that we are correct by Robert's rules, is say that Commissioner Delory has withdrawn his First Amendment, and the seconder withdrew her second, and then Commissioner Delory has made an entirely new motion, which included the friendly amendment that Commissioner Herr had put on to make the appointment for PFM Financial Advisors, and I see that Commissioner Zimbauer has his hand raised, so Commissioner Zimbauer. Yeah, but that's the motion on the floor. Does everybody understand that now? Okay, Commissioner Zimbauer.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to explore with my fellow commissioners some of the statements that were made. In the change of personnel at Hilltop, specifically, how is that impacting their ability to perform? I'd like to understand and explore that.
I'm not sure I'd like to get into that detail. I just think it's something worth noting, and if you maybe want to have a conversation with those folks at a later date, that might be more appropriate. I'm not attempting to disparage anyone. It's just not the same team.
Right, I understand that. I think we all understand it's not the same team. For me, and I've heard what everything has been said, there's value in my mind with entities that have experience, an extended experience with conducting work for a client. Unless there's something that somebody can point to me, I haven't seen anything that Hilltop has not performed to the expectations that we've had. So when I hear something about a team change, as a business person, I want to know, okay, well, what does that mean? Does that mean we don't like the people? Does that mean they're not performing now as compared to what they did previously? And I haven't heard that from staff. So maybe staff can weigh in. Has there been some issues with our current advisor that would cause us concern with the change in personnel?
Well, first, I'm going to recognize Commissioner Lockhart, because she has raised her hand. Commissioner Lockhart.
And I would love staff to weigh in, and I do think it's worth a conversation. I just don't think it's great to have it terribly publicly. But Commissioner Zimbauer, in your world, it would be, how many years have your top mechanics been at their positions, and are they ASE certified? And how many of your team members are performing, and how long have they performed at the very top of their field? So those are the questions that I think are appropriate to translate.
I see that Lori has come to the table, so I'm going to since we're doing staff, if Commissioner Zimbauer, you want to speak after that, I'll do, but I want to hear what the staff has to say. Thank you.
Lori Bailey Brown, Resource Management Director. I just wanted to add, as far as staff change, there has been a team change. In the scores that were provided from the evaluation committee, pricing was a big factor. 25%, I think it was weighed. I don't think the team change was necessarily weighed into the scores. It's been very soon to tell what the new team is like. That's what I'll add to that point.
Chairman?
Thank you very much. Yes, yes, Commissioner, Commissioner Zimbauer, you had your hand raised, and then Commissioner Herr.
No, that pretty much answers my question from a staff level. But to answer Commissioner Lockhart's direct question, I track my people on a weekly basis. So if they're not performing, I don't care if they've been with me 30 years. If they can't correct, they're gone. So that was my reason for inquiring, has something happened that we're not aware of in this team change? And I think we just got the answer there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Herr?
So I would concur with the staff evaluation, not only from an hourly rate perspective, it was significantly different between PFM and Hilltop, but it was also significantly different in the fees being charged. And by significant, I mean, I calculated it out based on a $200 million, $300 million, $500 million, and $100 million, and there is no place in that evaluation where they are on top, and the differences in some of them are significant. So I, at this point, feel comfortable calling the question.
The question has been called. I do have to do public comments. So and before that, I just wanted to say that from a personal thing, I was happy with the first motion if we were going to have a second. I have also, like Chairman Zimbauer previously, worked with Hilltop and found them to be highly competent and efficient. and looking out, obviously, for our best interest, but I also felt that I was moved for the motion because of the fees specifically, not because of the change of individuals. I think that they have done their job admirably. I was more concerned about the fees, and therefore that I was willing to go. In fact, it was my first choice also, the PFM. So with that, is there any public comment? Any further public comment? James, is anybody on virtual?
No, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and just to, since we've gone through some gyrations, let me just repeat. Thank you. That the motion is that we will accept PFM Financial Advisors and ask the staff to negotiate with them. But also in that motion, we have put in that we wanted them to be extremely careful and cautious with the fees that we've seen in there, that those things are part of the negotiation so that they don't become excessive and put us in a situation where that's where they gain. I don't want to say it that way, but just look at the fees that have been put in there.
So it's the additive fees for administrative services?
Correct. All right. Is there any, I'm sorry, I call the question, does not require a motion. We've gone through the public. Is there any, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a request and see if there's consensus among the board that we ask staff to come to us with a recommendation for how we should handle these types of procurements in the future? Maybe look at other counties and what their processes are. I'm tiring of having the same scenario over and over and over again, and we seem to come to the same place, and yet then we refer to something that's been a practice since the 90s, and then we lather, rinse, repeat, and it's Groundhog Day, and we do it all again the next time. So sometime between now and our next large
Yes. I was going to suggest that the staff do look at this and maybe come back at a work session, not a separate work session, but one of the work sessions that we have planned already, and just give us some ideas and recommendations.
Yeah, I would
to go
I
through.
I want to know what they recommend.
Right, I understand.
I'm tired of us fiddling.
And and I think there needs to be in there a procedure, like Commissioner Delory and Commissioner Zimbauer says, that if a commissioner wants to delve into it deeper, that they could have that request, and we could come as a board, make the decision whether that would be appropriate or not. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark Lee. Lori, thank you very much. And with that, we are now on the County Investment Advisor Report. Scott? It's good to see you here, Scott.
Good morning. It's a lot earlier than I'm usually up here. Less pressure. Okay. Holy smokes. Can we make that a little bigger? I'm afraid my eyes may be getting a little bit worse. I can usually see this bigger font pretty well. As usual, there's a lot going on, and unfortunately, I think during the course of the next 4 months, any uncertainty is probably going to increase. There's a lot of balls in the air right now. Obviously, you guys know the Delta variant is spreading. There really is no appetite for a shutdown anywhere, I think, right now, but what's happening is that people are becoming more cautious. That means a little less travel, it means a little less spending. And the economy is slowing down a little bit. GDP is already starting to moderate. That labor shortage that we've talked about before is becoming a little bit more pronounced. Job openings in the U.S. actually topped 10 million Easily the highest number of job openings on record, and this is the third consecutive month of records of job openings. Theoretically, there are 5.8 million people that have not come back from the job losses of COVID, and again, we're at 10.2 million job postings. There is an infrastructure package, a skinnier infrastructure package of $1 billion that passed the Senate. It has not come up for a vote yet in the House because there is additional infrastructure, another $3.5 trillion that is going to be considered. So the Senate will eventually vote on that, but it is not passed yet, either the $1 trillion or the $3.5 trillion. And I think that there's going to be a lot of debate over that. On top of everything else, there is a debt ceiling that is looming. I mean, in theory, the debt ceiling came up at the end of July, and right now we've adopted extraordinary measures on spending to get to the point where we can continue to pay the U.S. debt obligations probably until mid-October or early November. And the problem with this is that, as we start to talk about infrastructure spending and additional spending, the GOP and the Democrats are not in sync in terms of whether or not they're going to increase that debt ceiling. And for years, what we've done is basically suspended the debt ceiling, which allowed it to go as high as we needed it to go. The GOP is not going to allow suspension this time. There's going to have to be a hard number, and that hard number is going to be high. And it looks like if the Democrats want to pass that, they're going to have to pass it along party lines. And again, between now and the end of the year, there's a lot of debate. There's a lot of problems. The last time there was, in 2010, there was a long, long debate over the debt ceiling that resulted in S&P downgrading the U.S. sovereign debt rating from AAA to AA+. And it hasn't passed notice on a lot of people's minds that could potentially happen. Moody's is still AAA and Fitch is still AAA. And I think that, as we roll forward into this year, once the rhetoric starts to ramp up, I think that there will be some talk about that, and that introduces even more uncertainty on top of everything else. So, employment. This is one of the very, very strange things that obviously I just talked about, all the job postings. We've had 2 solid months of payroll gains that if you wiped out COVID, went back in history, those 2 months of gains would be the 2 largest gains that we had ever had in any single month, and there's still not enough. Not only do we have 5.8 million jobs that have not come back, but we've gone almost 2 years in theory, once we get to February, where we haven't had any gains at all. And you normally would expect to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 million per year. So there's a lot of jobs to make up. But it's not just a question of creating jobs. The jobs are there. People are just not coming back. There's lots of reasons for that. The schools not being open, child care not being open, the latest COVID threat, people wanting to work or at home. Lots of things are going on there. The unemployment rate did fall, which makes a great headline, from 5.9 to 5.4 in July. But the shadow there is the idea that there's 6.5 million people that are not counted as being in the labor force that would like a job. Not counted in the labor force means that you don't have a job and you're not looking right now. So, I'm not really sure what the answer is. The number of people that have chosen to retire in the 65 and older category doubled in 2020 from the previous year. So a lot of older folks who lost their jobs decided that they were just not going to come back, and they're not in the labor force now. So we'll see how this unfolds. The one thing I wanted to add to this thought, though, is that if we do have big infrastructure spending packages, that implies that there are going to be new jobs to be had. The question is, will there be people to fill those jobs? So lots of conversations. I think we're going to have to get really creative in how we try to get people back to work. But, if you think that the Fed is going to be able to orchestrate something on the labor front, the Fed, this is really out of their hands. A lot of things are out of the Fed's hands.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes.
You just mentioned the 65-year-olds that are no longer in the workforce. Is there any numbers that show how many of them actually took a buyout?
I'm sure there are. I don't have those numbers at hand.
A lot of people that I've spoken to that have retired, majority of them retired because they took company buyouts. And I was just curious if that data was available.
I'll see if I can find it.
Because that's a different scenario.
Yeah, that certainly is. That certainly is. I do kind of feel like the longer this goes on, the more likely it is that that trend is going to continue as well. And those are a lot of skilled workers. Those are a lot of people with a lot of experience as well. So, consumer spending, which drives GDP growth, drives economic growth, I had said that there's already indications that we've seen slowdowns already in terms of growth from the second quarter to what's expected to be the third quarter. Retail sales was actually down 1.1% in July, well below forecast. Much of that had to do with the big drop in vehicle sales, and it's not that people don't want vehicle sales or vehicles, it's just that they're not out there, they're not available. Same way with housing. Housing has fallen. Residential spending has fallen. It actually subtracted from GDP in the second quarter. It will subtract from GDP in the third quarter, which is really strange to think of because we're in the midst of a housing boom. But again, the inventory isn't there, and the workers aren't there to build new inventory. So, again, I think these are some things that are going to, we'll see how it all unfolds. The one thing that I wanted to mention, I don't want to get into a tremendous amount of detail, and there is a lot of detail to get into, but there was a University of Michigan consumer sentiment survey that came out that plays into future spending. And it dropped by 13.5 percentage points. That was well below the median forecast. It was the lowest in 10 years. And the key about that drop in sentiment was that it takes us below the level where we were in August of 2020 in the midst of the shutdown. So people are generally feeling worse than they did in April of 2020 about future prospects. Everything from being able to buy a home, being able to buy a car. And again, when you look forward and you wonder what's going to happen in terms of slowing, that all plays in. So again, you wonder, when is the Fed going to raise rates? Well, the Fed is not going to raise rates when the economy is already slowing by itself. So, I think people are reevaluating. Again, this is very much a transition type period. So where are the investment choices? Well, they're not tremendous. You guys did buy $55 million worth of treasuries in June. You bought another 15 worth in July. So you bought a lot of full faith and credit treasuries. I would like to think that there would be opportunities to buy more. One of the things that's really important to note is that there is a lot of money with the Florida banks. They are paying rates mostly at 25 basis points. So every consideration that we make about where money goes means that it may wind up coming out of the Florida banks that are still willing to pay a very, very attractive rate. Right now, a 6-month Treasury is paying 5. Again, the Florida banks are paying 25. There's not a whole lot of advantage in agencies. The pool rates right now, best game in town is Florida Prime, but even that is below 10 basis points. Florida Prime is the former SBA. It's managed by Federated, AAA, high quality, low fees, and that's really where your liquidity sits right now, where you can draw money to pay bills. Florida Palm rates, the posted rates anywhere 180 days, 3 basis points. You get the idea. Not too much out there. Fortunately, you did buy at a really good time. That $55 million was you bought some 2 years at almost 28. You bought some 3 years at almost 48, 49. Those, of course, have been on the books for a while, and they'll trickle down a bit. And we're waiting for opportunities to look closer to that. So upcoming maturities, I already mentioned this before. At the end of August, there is a Treasury that was at a nice yield that comes off. Bought that a while ago. When you get into late September, there's a couple more maturities. One of them is with Axiom Bank. The clerk's office has already asked Axiom for what they'd roll those at. We're going to look at the bank's ratings and a couple other things that we'll get next week to get a better sense of whether or not we want to continue to place, what's a fairly large, substantial amount of money with that particular bank. And then a Treasury matures later on. Recent purchases, you did, as I mentioned before, you bought $15 million last month of a Treasury. It was at 12 basis points. You did place some money at Florida Palm with the term rate at 14. And the recommended purchase, the only one we have at this point in time, because a lot of your money is either invested at this point or with the banks and the Qualified Public Depository Program, which I would like to keep in place as long as the banks are willing to let us do that. So we are recommending and have actually moved forward with this because it was only available very quickly, but $10 million was placed with the Florida Palm. It's a short into next year at 10 basis points. Again, that beats all the treasuries. It helps diversify a little bit. And we'll need a motion, but before we get that motion, I want to, since I have a little bit more time and we pass this over before, I know this is really hard to read. I'm going to have to make it to the point where you guys can read it a little bit better, but the overall yield of the portfolio is still 45. So with the 1 year, it's 6 or 7. That 45 is, I wish it was higher as well. Obviously, it's a lot lower than it's been a couple years ago. We've been 18 months now at essentially 0. The monies that you have in fixed rate investments and the money that is in the Qualified Public Depository ties up most of your funds. We'll draw from the $59 million that is in Florida Prime to pay the bills for the clerk's office. And with that Palm purchase and the maturity that happened at the end of August, the expectation at the end of August is that the yield on this portfolio is going to be, can't tell if that's 42 or 43, but it will come down a little bit. And I think it's important as we roll into the fall to have some liquidity. And the opportunities in the market are not outstanding. They're better than they were last month by a little bit. But we do feel like there's going to be a lot of volatility in the coming months. And, hopefully we'll have some opportunities for the remaining portions. And by the time we have the maturities in September, then we may have a little bit better opportunities to reinvest those. So we don't want to get ahead and reinvest those early. And then finally, this is the benchmark comparison. Comparing the portfolio yield to the constant maturity treasury 1 year as if you had bought a 1 year treasury every month for the last 12 months. And we've also got the 6-month moving average on there. So anyway, that is, I do need to, I guess I should go back just a bit because we do need to ask for a motion to implement the purchase recommendations, that being the $10 million for Florida Palm, based on the report that I've just provided you, and to recommend that the clerk implement the said board recommendations.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Motion to adopt the recommendations of our financial advisor based on the report submitted here today, and to direct our clerk to implement said board adopted recommendations.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Continue, Scott.
Thank you all.
Oh, did you want to say something? You didn't want to say anything else?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Although it looks like I might have dropped my mask, so. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it very much. Good to see you today. Okay, we now are going into the county attorney's briefing, and we have a update on opioid. Are you going to do this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, there are several defendants in the opioid litigation, and, as predicted, they're lining up to file their bankruptcies. I provided you with a brief outline of the Mallinckrodt PLC bankruptcy case. We're going to have to vote by September 3rd on the bankruptcy plan, and which is not final yet, so we can't vote today. So I'm asking for a motion to allow the county to follow the recommendation of the Romano Law Group, our outside counsel, with regard to the Mallinckrodt PLC bankruptcy and all subsequent bankruptcy plans by any defendant in the opioid litigation. That does not impact, this action would not impact any disbursement issues down the road. It's just to approve the plans. And if need be, we certainly can come back and have the board ratify whatever action's taken.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve the county attorney's recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion on that, the county attorney's office request has been made as a motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else, county attorney?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
County manager, is there anything else?
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, any member of the board have anything right now? Ladies and gentlemen, if I could, I would move the meeting to start earlier. I cannot. It has been, so we will reconvene at 1:30. Thank you very much, everyone.